All right. Well, after much fanfare from the first 2 weeks, unfortunately, a little bit of overindulging on Super Bowl Sunday, and we weren't able to record last Sunday. But we're right back at you this week, episode 3. Finally getting it going. A lot of people have been asking for it. Was wondering where we were last week. Just busy schedules this week. It's springtime. I'm starting track. Coach Salazar is deep in the basketball playoffs. And just a busy week for everybody, Super Bowl and all kinds of stuff going on. We didn't get a chance to sit down and do the podcast, but here we go. Episode 3 this week.
Here we go.
All right, so we're starting episode 3 of the Action Podcast with your host, Martin Alvarez, and co-host, Yvan Salazar. And we're back, finally getting a chance to play. I guess it's a week later. But so 2 Monday overs, Monday morning quarterbacks as far as the Super Bowl is concerned. It was a great game. The first half was not as exciting as we would have hoped. But it definitely was. I think there was 50-something points scored in the second half. And it turned out to be a great game, a defensive battle early on, and then later on it came down to the wire. Your thoughts on the Super Bowl last week?
Well, let's first start with logistics, Coach. I'm gonna make a side point here. Hopefully, some superintendents are hearing this. I really feel like Saturday would be a great day for Super Bowl. That's out of our control, but let's see what we can control. So last year, I was a part of some innovative approach from South San ISD. And it ended up being Monday after the Super Bowl was off for all employees of South San Independent School District. So they really earmarked it because of Super Bowl holidays. So I would say that that would be a great jumping point that maybe another superintendents across Texas could take note because I really feel like that would be a great way to start off with max production on a Tuesday.
Well, I mean, and not just in education, or I think the Super Bowl, the day after the Super Bowl, should be a holiday. Isn't it something like 125 million people watch the Super Bowl, something like that? So roughly 1 out of every 4 homes in America is watching the Super Bowl, and that's because every place that's probably watching the Super Bowl, there's more than just one person sitting there watching this game. So
absolutely,
I know at my house there was about 10 people, and so there's just so many people that watch this game that it should be a national holiday the next day after the Super Bowl. Give us a chance to recover, give us a chance to absorb it, because, and then, I mean, the game started at 5:30 but didn't end till 10:15.
No, it was definitely a long game. I will say that I was excited. I really feel like that the added play, the overtime added value to the game. Early on it was a little bit of a snore fest, if you will. But I really feel like that's what transcended it to be a much better game than probably initially starting. So I would say to begin with, like, I thought the San Francisco 49ers did an excellent job. Their front four really established the game. I thought defensively, there were some juggernauts that really were adamant about making it their tempo, their physical presence, and I was really impressed early on with their play.
Yeah, defensively, I mean, I think the Chase Young trade was a huge deal early in the season. I mean, to have him and then Bosa on the other side is just incredible. Excellent defense on both sides of the ball. But I was definitely most impressed by Chris Jones and the Kansas City secondary. I mean, they made those wide receivers and even Christian McCaffrey at times look pretty pedestrian. Where all season they had, Ayuk, they have all these weapons, Deebo Samuels, Kittles, a lot of weapons on that side that were shut down pretty much, for the most part in that game. I mean, in fact, I think was Jennings. I think the wide receiver from San Francisco had most of the receptions and the bigger plays. But I think it came down to the overtime and just an understanding of how the overtime worked. I don't think that I think that Shanahan came back and said that some of the players were unsure of what the rules were. And even as I was watching it, I was kind of like, okay, what's going on here? Because it's been so long since we've had an overtime game in the playoffs. But they didn't want it to be the whole Buffalo Bills versus Kansas City Chiefs from a few years ago, where it ended. It just sucked to end the way that it ended because both teams were playing so well. Both quarterbacks were playing so well. But I think the play of the game comes down to is on that third and goal down there in overtime. They don't block Chris Jones, and Chris Jones said at first he thought it was a screen, and realized they had just not blocked him, and he put pressure on Purdy. He had to throw it away. They kicked the field goal, and you give the ball back to Mahomes. And I mean, is Mahomes now a top 5 quarterback of all time? I mean,
I would say so. I mean, offensively, he did drag this team, to the playoffs. They were struggling early on. I mean, his receivers couldn't catch a ball. Matter of fact, I still don't feel overly confident on the receiving core that he has. Rashee Rice, had a solid game. Early on, Kelsey was limited and ended up with 9 receptions for 93 yards, but
all
he
in the
wasn't.
second half, yeah.
Most of it was in the second. 8 of the receptions were in the second half. I believe. He only had 1 reception, 1 yard in the first half.
Yeah.
Guy that we really enjoy watching, Isaiah Pacheco. I really felt that he was out of place. Not as explosive as he needed to be with how aggressive San Francisco was. I really felt in hindsight, using Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon is a lot more explosive, and they had a lot of, I want to say, the personnel that he had, 4 receivers, 1 running back, so I want to say that there were some opportunities to be able to, catch him on the run. And Andy Reid did not utilize that. But at the end of the day, they did end up pulling it out. I really was impressed. You talked about the defense, Trent McDuffie, the sticky coverage that he had. You said, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel were pretty much held to non-existent in this ball game. And a lot of that had to do with Trent McDuffie, man. I mean, there were some moments that he came up absolutely gargantuan on his, sticky coverage, timing of being in phase and at the last second strafing the football.
Yeah, no, definitely. I thought that he had an excellent game. Pacheco, I think kind of maybe the moment was a little too big for him. It's kind of how I felt. He fumbled twice. One he lost, and he, it just seems, I mean, of course, this is what his second season, I believe,
And he is in sophomore season.
So he's gonna be, with Mahomes as his quarterback, they're gonna be there a few more times. I mean, he's chasing Tom Brady at this point. But yeah, I thought McDuffie and the secondary for Kansas City, great job by the defensive coordinator and the defensive staff for Kansas City. Just putting together a great game plan. I thought Brock Purdy played well. I don't think he made a lot of mistakes, which is just kind of what you need at times, when you have guys around you. All leading up to the Super Bowl, I saw Cam Newton was probably on every sports show because he had made that statement about Brock Purdy being a game manager and not a game changer, and he was actually on the Warren Sapp podcast. I think it's called 4th and 1 podcast with Warren Sapp. And Warren went at him and was like, he's like, well, what do you think about my quarterback? Which he called Brady Johnson his quarterback, and he was like, he was a game manager, whatever. And he's like, so they went at it for a while, and then they finally, like, Cam was like, look, man, I didn't come on your podcast, like I respect you, like I'm not gonna get into that, like, he's like, but what I'm, and then he explained it, what he meant, that not saying that a game manager is not a bad thing, except that there are certain quarterbacks that are game changers, and the Tom Brady's, the um, Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, when the ball was in his hand and it was crunch time, I mean, he made things happen when there was nothing there, and I think that was the difference between in that game was we had a quarterback that was a great game manager, and Patrick Mahomes is a game changer, you know. And
Well,
you know,
we don't want to be sensationalists. I don't think Cam was being a sensationalist as well. You know, there is a lot to be said about the game managing aspect of the game. There are not a lot of top tier quarterbacks, you know, tier one, like the Patrick Mahomes, like, you know, we mentioned Tom Brady. You know, Lamar Jackson probably wouldn't be considered a game manager, but he didn't manage much against Kansas
no,
City's defense. So I just think he was just lending, you know, some credence to being a transcendent player that he was, still trying to remain relevant, and probably a little, you know, hurt that he is not on one of the rosters right now. I do agree with Cam and many people that are on his camp that say that he is a worthy starting quarterback, but he also brings a certain level of cachet. Like he's really, his name is bigger than some of these teams that we're talking about here.
right,
And
right.
and if he's not producing, or if he's taken away from the entire team mission, then I can see where he feels a little slighted, and that's where he would come out and say something like that to
Well,
protect a little bit of his you know, his background and what he brought to the table and such. But you know, I don't really feel that Brock Purdy is a game manager. I think he's a solid quarterback. He's still growing. He's still learning. He's going to be, you know, he's going to be an awesome force to be reckoned with, and especially if they're able to maintain a lot of the weapons that they have now.
yeah, and I mean, and that's kind of what he was talking about was, you know, and Warren Sapp went at him and was like, "Well, you're the quarterback that wouldn't pick up the fumble when it was on the ground." Like, he's like, "What kind of quarterback are you?" You know, and he was like, "Whoa, man, like, you know, like I didn't come on here
Yeah.
to get disrespected." You know, he's like, "I respect you too much to or whatever." It was a great interview if you get a chance to watch it, but there was no slap to being a game manager. I mean, you know, uh, Joe Montana, probably one of the best game managers, and you know, or you know, just knowing what's going on in the situational stuff. And but I think what we're looking at right now with Patrick Mahomes, I mean, like you said, he carried that team all the way to the Super Bowl. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um,
He's got that it factor. He
big
improvises
time, big
tremendously,
time.
and I really love what he brings to the table. I sent the video to you. I didn't hear about Patrick Mahomes. I knew that he was at Texas Tech. Never watched Texas Tech
Mm,
play at the time, but I remember I sent a video to you about him and Baker Mayfield's game that they
yeah,
had
it's
there in
insane.
Lubbock. It was an
Yeah,
insane game. They both put up monster video game numbers, and you know, who would have predicted this, right? Like, you know, at one point, Andy Reid had Alex Smith as the starting quarterback, and I believe they were 14-2 going into the
yeah,
playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, that year. And they got bounced from the playoffs. And it was you know, the foresight of Andy Reid to say, hey, we're not gonna, you know, renew Alex Smith, and we're gonna roll with Patrick Mahomes. And they haven't really looked back since. I mean, I know they lost to the GOAT Tom Brady, you know, Tampa Bay in the playoffs and such. And you know, on a side note, let's talk about Tom Brady. He was a game manager when he first started off, you know,
right,
and
right.
and he just morphed into the GOAT, you know. So yeah, there's no I don't want to say there's no insult in saying that there's a game manager aspect. At the end of the day, I think if we understand that as coaches, it's an extension of a coach on the field,
Right.
and a lot of these guys are trusted for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, but like, you know, 16-3 in the playoffs, three Super Bowls. Um, I mean, he's, you know, and he's not done. I mean, you know, he's not done yet. And he said that I'm chasing Brady, you know, and I mean, the way they're playing and the way Andy Reid, just offensively speaking, I mean, it just, you know, they're gonna be in plenty more Super Bowls. I think. I mean, it's theirs. It's going to be theirs to lose every year, as far as I'm concerned. You know, because and even like I was talking to my son about it, and I was like, well, they had a really crappy year this year, and he was like, Dad, they won 11 games, like, you know, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, dang, you know, it didn't really seem like that because they, you know, we're so used to them winning 12, 13 games a season, the Chiefs. Um, but it at the end of the day, having that guy at quarterback is the difference. I mean,
Having
it
that guy at quarterback and having Chris Jones at defensive line, Steve Spagnuolo as a defensive coordinator, the
Andy
secondary, the way
Reid,
that they
yeah,
had, you know, if they're able to keep that continuity defensively, you know, and then they add a piece to like compliment Rashay Rice and compliment. Let's not get it twisted. Even though Travis Kelce is very productive, I would say that he's going to probably be on the back end of his career as far as production goes. So having somebody to compliment and really take a lot off of his plate is going to be essential as they move forward.
Yeah, no, and I think they'll get better. They draft really well, and I mean, I think the sky's the limit for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's only 28 years old and already has 3 Super Bowls. I mean, as a Cowboys fan, there's a big difference when the lights are on playoffs. And as much as I like Dak Prescott, there is a huge difference between Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott. There's a huge difference even between Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott. But we'll save that one for another day, I suppose. But a very entertaining game. Definitely entertaining game. Definitely was one for the books. I always say as long as it's entertaining, if the Cowboys aren't there, and it was definitely an entertaining game.
I do have to say, man, as a previous running back, I really enjoyed seeing Christian McCaffrey work.
Yes.
80 yards receiving, 80 yards rushing, yeoman's work, max touches. I mean, that guy had 30 touches and 160 yards, and it was impressive.
If they win the game, he's the MVP, no doubt. No doubt about that.
That and Jawan Jennings came to play. He had, 2 really great plays that really stood out, that really could have made an argument that he could have been Super Bowl MVP.
That's true. And another weapon now that they have, like
like they need some more.
Like they need more, right? I mean,
let's talk about Kyle Shanahan, man. He's got a lot of backlash on just basically the logistics of how everything transpired. Obviously there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. And it's still going on. We're several days removed from the Super Bowl, and we're still talking about Kyle Shanahan and whether he knew the rules or he didn't know the rules.
Right.
What do you think about that situation and how it unfolded?
Well, they have all kinds of quality control and all kinds of guys in the booths and on the field. For them not to understand the overtime rule, and he came back and said, well, we wanted the ball first. We felt we had momentum. If we score, then they have to score a touchdown. And so we felt that was the best thing for us, was to put our offense back out there on the field. To me, the smart thing to do, and of course this is second guessing and playing 2 Mondays over a quarterback, but I like my defense out there first, because then if they stop them on a field goal, now you need to score a touchdown. And honestly, in the overtime also there's really no time. Both teams get a possession.
What do you say to this, Alvi? Their defense was on 11 straight plays in a minute and a half to close the regulation. That was probably something that was equated into the formula of that decision.
They said they had their analytics guy, and that's what they said, was that that was what their analytics said, was to take the ball. But maybe that was part of it. But then they ended up it was like a 12-play drive. The winning drive was a 12 or 14-play drive, I think, there at the end. I don't know.
Now here's one thing about analytics, and I would think that we're progressive coaches, and that we really are well informed with analytics. And Huddle, the Huddle platform has been tremendous for us, and how we make decisions and as coaches. But at what point do we go with our gut? Because analytics may say that, but analytics is not going to understand there's Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the field.
Well, it's like Campbell when he went for it 3 times for the 2-point conversion in that game. A lot of people dogged him about it, but that's what he felt he needed to do. And he got 3 shots at it. Not kicking the field goals in the playoff game might have came back and bit him a little bit. But at some point, I guess you just take your gut feeling of what you think that it needs to be. What Shanahan said, though, was that it was their analytics guys did say that that's what they needed to do. And, it turned out not to be the right decision, I guess, if you're going to, but again, it comes back around to, you're going to give the ball to Patrick Mahomes to finish the game. Like, No,
Yeah.
I'd rather have the ball in my quarterback's hand and let him finish the game, But,
Here's what's tough about his situation, Kyle Shanahan, is that as a coordinator once and as a head coach twice, he's gone into the second half with a 10-point lead and has lost a ball game.
hmm.
And that's kind of the tough pill to swallow. And we can talk about analytics, this and that, but he's had a 10-point lead going in these three different ball games and does not have a Super Bowl to say that this is on my
Yeah.
resume.
And this is the second Super Bowl in 4 years, I think, right? That he's lost. Yeah, I mean, uh, he's not a bad coach, though. I don't think. I mean, obviously, San Francisco has been the best team in the NFC the last 4 or 5 years, really, and they just keep getting better. I mean, you add defensive ends. Seems like they have defensive ends to throw away. Uh, maybe their interior defensive linemen they need to get some more of a run stopper up inside.
Mm-hmm.
Fred Warner. I mean, the way they use their fullback, they actually use a fullback offensively, which I really enjoy watching.
Coach, you
Um,
talk about Fred Warner. He's a beast, but
yeah.
man, that moment when Dre Greenlaw went out and how devastated Fred Warner was, from the
Oh,
moment
that was
he's
horrible,
watching his
man.
teammate,
Yeah.
rupture his Achilles to him sitting on the bench and Bosa coming over and comforting him, man. Like he took that really hard. And I think that was really a pivotal point of,
Yeah, because
how San Francisco
yeah,
was working.
because Greenlaw was playing really well up until that point, and
Mm-hmm.
just a freak thing. He goes out there, he's excited to go out there. I think he kind of jumps up to get the possession change and blows an Achilles. Apparently it had
It's
been a
crazy.
lingering, yeah, it had been a lingering injury that he had for a couple of weeks. It had been kind of nagging, but it wasn't anything that they thought was significant enough. But I mean, Achilles are just a crazy thing, and I mean, he jumps up a few times, getting on the field, getting himself hype, and just goes down. Man, that was horrible to see. That
That
was
that
not
was
good.
that was the worst, man. I
Yeah,
really feel bad for him and just for the moment that happens in. I mean, it's kind of now it's out of his control. I mean, we kind of talk to our players, right? Control what you can control, and then
yeah,
you get dealt one of those cards, man. It's a tough blow for sure, and our thoughts and prayers for him for a speedy recovery. But that was just tough to watch, and
yeah. That was
obviously how
hard. That was hard.
everybody responded was probably a little bit of taking the sail out of their or the wind out of their sails, I should say.
Yeah, no, that was tough to watch.
What else stood out for you, Alvin? I mean, we had a fantastic halftime show. I don't know if it was the best, but it definitely there's a lot of bangers on there. That was one of the ones that I really enjoyed. Usher obviously speaks to our time,
Yeah, yeah.
us growing up, and there was a lot of bangers there's a lot of musical guests, like Ludacris, Lil Jon,
I,
Alicia Keys.
yeah, no,
I'm a
it was a
huge fan of.
star-studded, yeah, star-studded. But it's still nothing compares when Dr. Dre. I mean, to me, that's still the best. That's still the best Super Bowl halftime show. I'm sure people would argue with that, but the Dr. Dre one to me was the best. But
Dre and Prince. Dre and Prince for
yeah,
me were probably the best ones. Singing Purple Rain while it's raining.
yeah.
That was dope, man. That was super dope. But I did enjoy this show. Man, somebody should have tossed him a towel though. He was drenched. My
Well,
boy
he's
was putting
old,
in
man.
work, man.
He's old, man. He's got to
Oh,
be
you
in
don't
his.
look that
What
old,
is he?
coach. He was
What
putting
is he
in
like?
work, and
55 or something?
I mean, when you're old, you say he's old, but if you feel old, man, you ain't taking your shirt out like that with max confidence,
No,
and that's
no,
what he
god
did.
dang, dude. I
You
was
know,
embarrassed. I was embarrassed when they did that. Turn that
yeah,
TV off,
man.
man.
It was definitely a good show, man. I definitely it brought back a lot of memories. He did get paid just slightly over $600, for that. But I'm hearing
Really?
that he's going to be on the north end of $100 million that he's going to earn. I'm a prime music guy,
Yeah.
and as I was making my selections in music, I was noticing trending on some of
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, it's great
songs,
music. Great
and
music, man.
and so obviously he's getting royalties off of that, and I'm hearing he's having positive traction with his upcoming tour sales and such. So that's
I think
pretty interesting
I
to
think he's
know.
got a residency in Las Vegas, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I think I heard something about that where he does a residency show in Las Vegas. Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, in fact, it was one of the first. It was one of the first Super Bowls in a while where you were kind of looking forward to the halftime show. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know when we were outside, I threw some. We were threw some chicken wings on the grill, and as we were, we're outside celebrating before the game. That's one of the things. Like, oh, what song do you think he's gonna play? You know, what
Mm-hmm.
so it was a good time, man. It's what what that game is supposed to be, right? It's the biggest game of the year, and I think it lived up to the hype, and it was a great time, great halftime show. The commercials still to me are not as good as they used to be when I was younger. It seems, or maybe I just and I think that my favorite is probably Kanye West's 20-second where he go down there and gave his website out, and then he sold his T-shirts
His
for
merch.
$20.
His
Apparently
merch.
apparently overnight he made like $13 million selling $20 T-shirts, uh, which are not. There's really nothing to the T-shirt. I went on the website myself, so he got me.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
um,
he's a culture icon, so
yeah.
that was going to be a positive spin for him, no matter how foolish he gets. But I would say my favorite one was the Christopher Walken one.
Mm.
Where everybody was mimicking him, and we all know that he's kind of one of those characters that a lot of folks like to imitate,
A little more
and so
cowbell.
yeah, man, that was pretty good, man. But I was waiting for those, like the Budweiser commercials where it's real sentimental type. I didn't see any of those, although we did get a Budweiser commercial towards the end of the game. So I was waiting for something like that. I think the writing, is lacking a little bit. Some of the creativity of previous Super Bowl commercials have been much more stellar, but you know I mean, I don't know why that would be though. If you're lacking
Yeah,
in
I
writing,
don't
I
know.
mean, it's a $7 million spot. You
Yeah,
figure
well,
you put your best foot forward.
you put all everything into that commercial because you want it to be remembered for a Super Bowl commercial, But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now if you're watching YouTube or whatever, it pops up every 2 minutes, an ad. So it's I guess maybe there's just more room for advertisement now. I don't know. I don't really know or understand why. It doesn't seem that they put as much into the commercials as they used to, but that was always one of the things. Watch the commercial and try to see which one was the best and the funniest and which stood out. I do want to watch Deadpool 3 now. After
Yeah.
watching
Well,
after
well,
watching the preview, that one was pretty good.
one of the funniest things is Ryan Reynolds is sending an IG out of "Where's my wife? Has anybody seen my wife?" And she's up there
She's sitting
sitting
with Taylor
with
Swift.
yeah, that was
Yeah,
pretty funny,
yeah,
man.
that was great.
But yeah, definitely was I want to say it was solid. If we were giving him a rating, I would say C plus. Overall, I would say that B plus for the halftime show. That it was entertaining. Skating while singing. I could see why
Mhm.
my boy was sweating a little bit, man. But I thought for the most part was pretty cool, man. And we had to have some good conversations about it. I do have an audio video production class, and we had some conversations about just what the kids enjoyed about the Super Bowl and such, and um, it wasn't without any controversy.
Right.
What do you think about that Andy Reid and Travis Kelce situation, man? I know a lot of folks
Uh,
really you know took to social media about that and voiced their
yeah, man.
displeasure the next day.
I mean, you never want to see an athlete act like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he intended to be any disrespect. I mean, Andy Reid is in his 60s, so you know, if a 6'4", 260-pound, tight end goes and bumps you, you're probably going to lose your balance. So I think it may have been more than what it looked like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he was just, I don't know if he was calling for the ball. I didn't really, you know, but you don't want to see that. I mean, apparently Andy Reid didn't really think much of it. Um, and neither did Kelsey. I think it just kind of we blew it up more than probably what it is. But uh, no, you don't want to see it. Especially when young athletes are watching. That's not the way you react to a situation. You're obviously entitled to voice your opinion, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
way different when you're dealing with grown men. As opposed to teenagers and young adults. But No, I didn't enjoy seeing that. I didn't think that was a way to act. Um, Apparently, like I said, Andy Reid didn't think much of it, and neither did Kelsey. Um, so I mean,
Speaking,
rightfully he got some backlash for it. Now, if he's Antonio Brown and he does that, I mean, is he out of the league? In a couple of
oh,
games.
for sure. I
you
think
know,
there
there's
are certain
definitely some.
dynamics that some folks are not going to talk
All
about. I
right.
think that's number one. Had it been an African American player that was demonstrative like that,
Mm-hmm.
how would it have been taken? There is a catch-22 in certain respects and such. But I would say this, being involved with sports for such a long time, there is going to be some conflict. There's going to be some conflict at times with between player and coach, between players. I would go back and really analyze, are we teaching our, I mean, we're concerned about role model, and how that trickle down effects is going to be like, at the end of the day, parents, you're in control of that, right? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the messaging that we give to our youth at home, and then obviously as coaches, the messaging that we provide, in those confines, like, I think we control a lot of that and really can nip things in the bud. When it comes to that, I'm not overly concerned. I think these are two grown men that love each other, that were probably passionate about how disappointing the first half was. I know for sure, I would say that Travis Kelsey really acted out of line. There's no
Yeah.
denying that.
Yeah.
But you and I, as men being involved in sports, know that conflict happens a lot more than it's actually seen.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's just not the way you want. But you're right. I mean, that's a conversation then you have with your son at home. Be like, that's not how you act towards a coach. That's not respectful. That's not how you handle a situation. And
And let me say that I'm not condoning that behavior at all.
right, right.
But as you said, right, it's important that we're having these conversations
Hmm.
because you know at the end of the day, man, like, there is sportsmanship, there is class, there is a way how to treat your the people that you should hold in high regard, and the reverence you show them, like a coach, like a teacher, like a parent. Like,
Right.
I don't condone acting a fool in front of your people that are put in charge of you, and so that's definitely goes without saying. But it is what it is, man. These are men, these are multimillionaires who have a little spat in a highly televised game.
Yeah, and it almost looked to me too when he bumped him and kind of Andy Reid lost his balance that he was like, oh dang, like you know, it's almost like he caught himself in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
I really think it looked maybe worse than what it was because Andy Reid lost his balance, but you know, um,
Yeah,
it is what it is, and obviously they squashed it and didn't feel it was a big deal, but it's a great learning opportunity for young guys, on
for sure.
how to uh, how to treat your coaches, how to act. But yeah, no, I didn't enjoy seeing that at all.
Let's close this Super Bowl edition, man. What do you think? Should we expect the Kansas City Chiefs back here in this show?
As long as they have Patrick Mahomes, I think they're going to be back in the mix every year. A team that really wasn't expected to, they were the third seed, and um, I almost feel like, in a way, it's like the Spurs when they were really good, and they would kind of coast a little bit in the regular season, and then once the tournament started, they would turn it up.
Mm.
And I feel that's what Patrick Mahomes, I feel that's what happened with that team. Is all of a sudden they were like, okay, now it's for real. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the defense raised their level. Patrick Mahomes raised his level. Isaiah Pacheco raised his level. I mean, everybody raised their level with the understanding that now it's crunch time. And
Mm.
you know, which is exactly what we're having trouble with as a Cowboys fan, right? Is that big game comes and nobody raises their level, and the situation is what it is. But I felt collectively as an organization, they were like, okay, now it's for real, and
Yeah.
they took care of business. All three of the games in the playoffs. I mean, they handled their own, and yeah, no, I think year in year out, I mean, you expect Patrick Mahomes to be a favorite for the MVP. He's taken himself to a whole other level. I mean, winning 2 is significant, obviously, but now winning 3, and
with the potential of a 3P next year.
Yes, back to back. I mean, nobody's ever done that, and yeah, I mean the Chiefs are the ones to beat. The Chiefs are the ones to beat, and teams are going to get better. But I mean, this was not a team that you would say was better than the team previous year for the Chiefs, and they still won the Super Bowl because they had Patrick Mahomes. And as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, I mean, they're going to be in the mix every year.
Well, the chances are of them coming back, because you mentioned the reasoning of Patrick Mahomes, I feel like that's very plausible. I really feel like the AFC is in a good spot right now. In general, I think, Baltimore will take another leap with maturity. I want to see how Miami responds. They were hot the majority of the year. They lost a lot defensively, that they didn't have a defensive punch, in playoff time, but they definitely have the weapons offensively to challenge. There is a lot of situations I feel like that will improve. But again, they're the champs. To beat the man, to be the man, you gotta beat the man, as Ric Flair would say. So until that happens, until we see some evidence of other teams rising up and challenging them, the Bills ain't going away.
Right.
Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks. If I would say probably second best. If not, third best. Behind Lamar and Patrick, but. And then there's that man, Aaron Rodgers, coming back, with a lot of weapons, great defense there in the Jets. And I'm hopeful that those guys can take a leap and, kind of take I mean, New York has been, misery, for such a long time, man. And I would love to see them, kind of have some, a little bit of a resurgence, or some surgence, I should say, not resurgence, a surgence, and maybe ascend a little bit. But there's a lot of great teams out there, and of course I'm hopeful that my Vikings kind of figure things out, and of course you're hopeful that your Cowboys kind of figure things out.
And they just hired a former Viking and as their defensive coordinator.
He's a dude, man.
Mike Zimmer's coming back. So.
He's an excellent coach, excellent defensive mind. Really enjoyed the time that he served in Minnesota, and I think for us, it was time for us to have a offensive minded head coach, and that was kind of like the the whole cause behind his firing and such. But you guys got to go to, man, and I think that you'll see a lot of steps. They highly respect each other, him and McCarthy, from their battles in the NFC North, and so I think it'll be a great situation for Cowboy fans just to watch it unfold.
Yeah, and he's saying the right things. He said they got to fix the run defense, and run stopping is the priority, and building defensive line and linebackers. So. No, hopefully they can get like I said, they got to get over that hump. They got to raise their level for the playoffs. I mean, it's great winning 12 games a season. I'm not gonna laugh at that, but when it counts, is what we got to win. And hopefully he's what we need to get over that hump.
Yes, sir.
Yep. All right, so this past Saturday, we thought about recording our podcast last Saturday. Of course, then we wouldn't have been able to get we got some Super Bowl preview, but not really. We just spent 37 minutes talking about the Super Bowl, and the NFL. But we attended the South Texas Coaches Association clinic and social over at DA Coach Daryl Andrus, athletic director at Jordanton, over at his ranch. It was a great time of fellowship. There was coaches from several different staffs there. Just a good chance to talk ball and just kind of talk to coaches. And it's a great organization. It was started a few years ago by area coaches, Coach Andrus, Coach Darby House, who's now at Nacogdoches, who was at Poteet, Coach Martinez from Natalia, and several other coaches, Coach Luna from Poth, and several other coaches from the area. It was a chance, not to diss the San Antonio All-Star game, but it covers such a wide area and larger schools at that sometimes the small school kids kind of get lost in the shuffle. And even when they're selected, they get minimal amount of playing time and things like that, which is understandable.
Mhm.
So they started an association just to have an all-star game, really, and to give kids, seniors, an opportunity to play in another game from all the area, smaller schools in the area. And it's turned out to be a really great game. I mean, last year it went into overtime. I've had the ability to coach it the last 2 years, and at the staff in Poteet, and now the staff in Natalia, and it was it's a great experience, and the best kids in South Texas, really, that just love football, and it's incredible what those kids are capable of doing. But for a lot of them, it's the only time, last time they'll get to play. Um, and then they've expanded it this last couple years to include an all-star volleyball game, all-star basketball, girls and boys all-star basketball game, and they give away over $20,000 in scholarships. It's a great organization. If for those coaches out there, athletic directors, if your staffs are listening, it's a minimal fee for your entire staff to be part and to participate in those things, and definitely look into it, and contact Coach Martinez or Daryl Andrus, or Jeff Luna at Poth, because it's a really great organization, and that luckily I've been a part of. But there was some great fellowship. I mean, it was a good time. The stakes were on point, and a lot of camaraderie, and getting to talk to coaches, and talk football, and things like that. And this is the first time you've attended, Coach. I think this is the first time you've been a part of the South Texas Coach Association. What did you think?
Coach, one thing that, to begin with, what resonated with me is, let me give you a little bit of a backstory from my experience. Being a San Antonio guy, inner city, Lanier High School, my senior year, we had a really great campaign. Ended in the first round, and a really exciting game against Beeville, lost by 2 points. But I would say that I had a really, great year with my offensive line, myself. I had a grand total of 1,700 yards and 15 touchdowns, second team all city nod, but I didn't get selected to that all-star game.
Really?
Somebody fumbled the ball there. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
It's not that I think about it every day, wink, wink, but I will tell you, I bring that perspective because I know how much that can do for somebody's confidence.
Mhm.
Participating in a game like that. That for me, that was a little bit more of a muse, not being able to participate in that and using it as fuel to the fire. But I know for a fact that there's a lot of kids that come from sub 5A. We're talking about anywhere from 1A all the way to to 4A that are in the South Texas region that don't get a lot of playing time. They get overshadowed from the 6A, 5A schools that are extremely popular here in the greater San Antonio area, and so they don't get a really fair shake for whatever reason. Um, you know, as that transpires, and so that experience kind of doesn't seem too great for a lot of individuals that were selected for that. Well, now you have this organization that we're talking about here, the South Texas Coaches Association, that founded these all-star games, and it gives these student athletes an opportunity to you know maybe continue continue on their
Yeah.
education as a student athlete, or be the last time to celebrate with some of the best in their area, some of the best from the small towns all around the greater San Antonio area in South Texas. So that's what really jumped out to me initially, is that what a wonderful opportunity. Scholarships are behind that, so a little bit of money being thrown at an individual that is well deserving is pretty awesome. The fellowship, man, like meeting some of the coaches, talking and chopping it up with them, networking at that clinic was pretty awesome, man. There's a lot of wonderful people that do yeoman's work at a lot of these small school environments, and if you know anything about that, man, you're rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty doing work at all different areas of the school. So these are men and women that coach in these places that that are not afraid of work, that, really, embody servant leadership. And that's what we were around on Saturday, Albie. And I really was just soaking that up and enjoying the leadership from, guys like DA. Jordanton does a great job. They have an outstanding program. Jeff Luna, Poth does a great job and have an outstanding program. And of course, one of our mentor friends, Yvan Martinez, who's now going from Natalia and has assumed the direction of the Floresville program. These guys are pivotal in getting this thing going, and it was just a great thing to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, no, congratulations to Coach Martinez on his new adventure at Floresville as he takes over as athletic director this next week. Excited for him to get that opportunity, and he definitely will be missed at Natalia. But yeah, definitely, like you said, it was a lot of small school guys, and in fact, Coach Andrus, DA as we like to call him, he brought it up about how he had attended a panel at the DFW clinic for small school coaches, and where they talked about the tribulations of being in a small school, getting coaches in the period and getting admin to buy into stuff, or all the stuff that happens at a small school where you have coaches maybe coaching multiple sports at the same time. So a lot of things that go into small school that sometimes maybe you don't really think about, but like you said, some of the toughest, hardest working people at small schools, where they have to do everything, and also getting he made a great point in talking about trying to get youth to be coaches, because we're obviously not going to do this thing forever, but getting young people that you see in the hallways that have the ability to be coaches. He mentioned kids that even aren't, they're not athletes, but they have that kind of coach mentality and
Right.
are part of the team that aren't necessarily players for them, but sitting down with them and drinking a cup of coffee and saying, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a coach?" And kind of helping them, guide them that way, because their people are leaving the business in droves, partly because of the amount of work and things like that. That we can get these young guys to come in and be a part and mentor them the right way to where they're, this thing is going to become theirs at some point. Um, we're the old coaches now, and that's kind of, it's one of the things over the last couple of years that I've kind of started to realize more and more, is that I am the old guy in the staff. We are the older guys, and sometimes those guys, the younger guys, look for us for mentorship. But it's finding those guys early on, and identifying them. There's a lot of kids that right now, where we coach, where I'm like, that kid would be a great coach. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if that's something that he's interested in, but sometimes, a lot of, you've talked about having seniors have plans, speaking with them about coaching and things like that, and just getting them set up to have a plan, and if that's something they're interested in, then to develop that, and I thought that was a great talk by DA, very impassioned speech about getting the youth involved in coaching, and yeah, it was a good time, great fellowship, and it's always a good time seeing those guys and talking to them and experiencing them. I mean, when you can sit there and listen to Coach Luna and Coach Andrus talk about their offensive schemes and things like that, I mean, just the passion they have for what they do is incredible.
Yeah, Coach Andrus really, hit the nail on the head. We do need to, establish a pipeline of people replacing us at some point. Now, if they join our ranks right now, we'll be able to kind of help mentor them and show them the ropes of how things are done. But eventually, we're going to fade off, and that place will be, wherever we're at, will still be running. And we want to leave it in great hands, and so that is crucial. We talked about this yesterday about something when I set my portfolio up of having a senior exit plan, and making sure that our kids are well aware and transition to life after high school. And a lot of times I've observed in programs where seniors are done, they're done. like,
Yeah.
transfer them out of the athletic period, or let's kind of limit if they're not going to participate in any sport. It's kind of limit some of the things they're going to do in the class. And I don't really like that, because there's so many things that we could do for them to help them and prepare for the next phase of their life,
Right.
and including convincing them to be a part of this profession. What a rewarding profession. You talked about kids that come to mind. Marcus, is a kid
Yeah.
that comes to mind that I feel would be a wonderful coach. He's one of the best teammates I've ever been around that we get to work with on a consistent basis. And so people like him need to be aware of what it takes to become a coach, the steps, and just be fed, not so much fed, but like giving these options of, this is what's available to you and this is how you would get it done. And we need to be advocates of our program. Men out there, men and women that are listening to this podcast, that are in the coaching industry, that we definitely need to establish a pipeline that, the next wave of professionals are going to take over for us.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great speech about the, not just small school, but just the amount of uh, lack of coaches coming into the business, and
Well, coach, it's not even small school.
Mhm.
uh, I've worked in inner city long enough to know that some of the things that are a smaller school, are in some inner city districts. Guys
Yes,
not being in
yeah,
the athletic period, not having the right support in place, the coming up with multiple resources, being creative with that. Like, these are all things that also test the inner city as well. And
yeah. No,
and
I
so
think
it,
it's
it, it definitely doesn't make it appealing to work in a place like that. And
Mhm.
and so, having our ducks in a row, and, as they say, dotting your I's and crossing the T's,
Yeah.
is important for us to be advocates of our program, and establish a pipeline.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And it's something that's not easy, and but it's extremely rewarding, and you get summers, for the most part, you get summers off, and all the major
Somewhere.
holidays. So it's a great selling point, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, no, I thought it was a great time, and I look forward to the All-Star games coming up here in the spring. And we'll keep y'all posted on that. Uh, and we want to try to see if we can get Coach Andrus on at some point on our podcast. I think he's a
He
great
definitely agreed to.
leader of
So
men. Yeah,
yeah,
great
he
leader of
agreed to.
men,
So
and definitely an advocate for our profession. And so we're going to try to get him on as soon as possible. So as the springtime is in full go, definitely a busy time of the year. Our kids for sure right now are, they're doing ag, they're doing baseball, softball. There's, powerlifting is still going on.
we're in the
We
playoffs.
Basketball is in the playoffs. Yeah,
Yeah,
both
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
girls and the boys programs. We're in the playoffs, and thankfully we don't have to deal with soccer and tennis and all that other stuff. Golf is full swing right now, no pun intended. And then of course track season is going on, and we talked about we're both big track guys, obviously. Coach Salazar, a former head track coach, and I've been a head track coach for the last 10 years or so. And it's one of the things that we're starting to notice. Is the benefits of track, um, and the mental toughness that it builds, the self resilience. That's a lot of things that I tell my kids all the time when we're practicing. Uh, because kids are very instant reward right now. In our society, and track is not one of those sports where you're going to get instant gratification. And the workouts are grueling. I was talking
Mhm.
to a track coach at our practice meet the other day about how you know he used to. Well, first of all, they used to be Saturday track meets. Almost Saturday track meets are almost non-existent now. They're very,
Mhm.
very difficult to find. So you had the 5 days of workouts, and Mondays were going, your quarter Mondays where you were gonna, you're gonna get after it. And kids are not able to complete the workouts, or you're concerned about kids not wanting to do it after a while because of the grueling aspect of a track workout. But to me, there's no sport that we have that it benefits all other sports. I mean, to be in shape, to get faster, to compete, the mental toughness aspect. I mean, I'm a big proponent of track, and it's something that we need to push. I think, especially in this where we're headed in our country, is the resilient, the self resilience, and the mental toughness, and things that track teach you. And you know uh,
Well, Coach, I mean, I would say that we've never been in a time with an abundance of entertainment options.
right,
So
right,
we have a group of kids that are gravitating to other spring sports, and then we have another group of kids that are gravitating to what's online, you know, and
Fortnite.
their phones, and there's so many endless supply of entertainment options for our kiddos, man. My thing is that I'm really missing the grit, the grit of competitive people, you know, and ultimately, man, like I get it, it's pretty overwhelming sometimes, man, when there is a dude that you're about to run that's probably in lane 4, probably in lane 5, that's just going to be head and shoulders above everybody else, but the mindset of track is to overcome what you set yesterday, to PR every day, every time you touch the track, every time you make a jump, every time you make a throw. you know these are all things that should be in mind. And a lot of times, I hear a lot of excuses about, well, I'm not going to win the thing.
Right,
Well, I'm not asking you to win the thing. I'm asking you to better yourself, better the time that you put before, win the day, if you will.
mhm,
That's what I'm asking you to do. And so it's just really convenient and easy for kids to tap out and not address it head on. And listen, you know, I know I grew up as a fast person. I wasn't always the fastest, coach. We talked about this before. My senior year, I'll go to a track meet, pull up, and I got to run against Daryl Williamson from Holmes and Cedric Griffin. And in the next track meet, I got to run against Donnie Pinkerton. You know what I'm saying? And in district, I got to go against guys from Shirts Clemens and Sam
right,
Houston that are just, phenomenal athletes, man. And so I get it. It can be overwhelming, some of these men that you're facing, and for women, some of these women that you're facing that are extremely talented. But the point about track is to establish some mental discipline, some grit, the competitive nature, to get some flexibility, some explosion involved
right,
into your approach. And this is what we're requiring of our athletes. This is not you can't. It's not a slouch sport. You can't just donate a little bit of time here and be a part-time
right.
guy. And so we're just kind of speaking out loud as an advocate for track. Um, we know that there's some challenges from it, trying to get kids out, and we got to stay vigilant with this, coaches, about making sure that our kids are participating in that, because at the end of the day, there's a wonderful component to it when it comes to social component. When you go to track meets and kids interact with somebody else from a different school, like those are all great things that you can pull from this wonderful sport.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point you bring up about the grit. Because it's amazing to see when the light comes on, the competitive light. That comes on sometimes, where you're not necessarily, you're going out there, and that other guy might be faster, but that you're going to give it everything you got. And I mean,
Absolutely.
there's and then coming off the track and knowing that I did everything I could, or even having a junior high kid who is running a 10-minute mile or whatever, but then the next meet he runs a 9:20 mile, and just to look on the kid's face when he says, coach, I beat my time, and it's just it's a quantitative sport where you can see the process, you can see the process and how it's going to work, and then the outcome of the process. And
Tangible evidence of
right,
growth.
exactly. And I think that's why powerlifting is another sport where you can see the tangible goals that you've set, and if you put in the work, it shows at the end. Sometimes though there is a gap between that work and then the outcome, and sometimes there's a plateau, and uh, but when you do see a kid that overcomes that and figures it out, that what, this is more about me competing against myself than anything else, and and when that light comes on, you know, very often the next year, those will be football players that you can count on, or,
For sure.
those are the guys that become leaders because they understand what the work is, and there's just so much about track that that is important to programs in general, and I know, it's a busy time of the year, and kids are doing all kinds of stuff, but you guys that are out there that are athletic directors and head coaches, I've been fortunate enough to the guys that I've worked for where they were big track people, and it's like, Coach Martinez, had mentioned a few times that, the teams with the most kids at regionals are usually the teams that next year in football that are going to be, winning district championships and things like that, and it's just great to be able to see kids compete at the level that some of these kids are capable of when they don't know that they're capable of that. I don't know if I said that to make sense, but because once they push that threshold, and but there's nothing prettier than seeing a kid run a 400 that has struggled in practice and has not gotten many races go in his favor, and then as the year progresses and you get into district, and then all of a sudden he's hitting his goal time and sees the opportunity to advance, or a kid that comes out of nowhere that you weren't counting on, who all of a sudden, breaks out the ability to sprint, faster than you thought that he could be, and or just take high jump for example. I'm a big high jump guy, and that's a big mental. It's almost all mental, you can see when they reach the bar gets to a certain height, and then all of a sudden, they're like, oh no, this is it, this is where I stop, and it's just a mental thing that once they beat that,
Mm-hmm.
I've had kids where they didn't know what height it was, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, don't worry about what height it is, and then all of a sudden they've jumped, a foot higher than they normally would, but it's
Right.
there's a lot to be said for track, in just building that toughness, that grit, that programs uh, can benefit from.
I would really say I do want to close it on this, coach. Like, I want to get back to the days when it comes to track that we treat it with a childlike mentality. Here's
Right.
what I mean by that. When you're a child, you are willing to take so many risks that are, when you grow older, you calculate like, man, can I make that jump? What are my consequences to that? What are the ramifications? When you're younger, when you're a little boy, little girl, like none of those are calculated. You're going to take the risk no matter what. For instance, you're going to find out if the stove is hot, right? And you're not going to listen to mom or dad saying like, mijo, mija, this is hot. And you're going to be like, nah, you're going to be stubborn. You're going to touch it yourself and find out if it's hot. That's
Yeah.
when we're younger, right? We have the ability to make risks, right? We don't necessarily always make those calculations. I want to approach track with a childlike mindset in that regard, right? Where you're willing to put yourself out there, take those risks, live in the uncomfortable area, right? Because this sport is going to push you to red
Yeah.
line often, right? You're going to red line because you're revving it up so much, and you're going to find out what you're made of, and you're going to make sure that you let the competition know, man, I've been putting in that work to better myself.
Yeah, it could be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's a big part of life, right? I mean, is doing things that we don't necessarily want to do, but that we need to do, right? And yeah, I mean, I think it's I really enjoy, uh, especially coaching the junior high kids.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to go back and coach the junior high kids as well as the high school kids, and just their, like you said, that mentality where that, I mean, we're going to race. Like, like they're not thinking about, oh, like I'm not fast, or they just know they're going to race and they're going to give it everything they got,
Mm-hmm.
or when a kid first jumps in the sand pit and long jump, I mean, whenever we have tryouts for long jump, there's 40 kids wanting to long jump, and they're not afraid to throw themselves in the sand, and then something happens along the way where they get in high school, and then all of a sudden they become too cool, and oh, I don't want to get sand on me. Like, really, that's what you're worried about? Like, last year you
Well,
jumped, you were a 16-foot jumper as a girl in high school. That's you're good. Like, doesn't matter the sand, or well, no, I don't know if I'm gonna play this year. I'm not gonna run track this year because I don't think I'm fast. Like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, beat your times, get better. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that's lacking. And I mean, fortunately, we do have a lot of kids out this year, and finding what they can do. But yeah, it seems like every year it does get a little tougher to pull out those kids and get them to run mile repeats, or a 1, 2, 3, 4 ladder and then back down. Like, I mean, it's definitely an interesting time when it comes to those things because of how challenging they are.
So, in closing, if you're a student athlete, right, run track,
Yeah,
give it your all, put your trust in your coaches, right? They're going to get you better. Don't be afraid of competition. It is what it is. The whole goal is to get better and beat your time, beat your throw, beat your jump that you previously set the day before. That's all it is.
that's
Get
all it
after it.
is. Yeah, that's all it is. Bigger, faster, stronger, right? And
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want to get stronger, you hit the weight room, do powerlifting. If you want to get faster, run track. It's pretty much that simple.
All right, folks. Well, just to close out our segments for today, I did a little bit of reflecting. I'm gonna get a little vulnerable here with you guys. Just recently I had my biological father passed away, and it was definitely tough times, a lot of tough circumstances, very confusing. To make a long story short, he didn't really raise me, grow up in my life. I re-engaged with him at age 27, and we had a relationship. I'm 42 now, so it's just kind of give, little take, type of conversations here. But cancer sucks, man, and it took his life. And I did a lot of reflecting, mainly because I didn't know how I should feel. It was a little awkward in the sense because I'm visiting a person. I'm at this visitation, and I know he means something to me, but I just don't know the depths of it, because to be truthful, I'm looking at a person that didn't really live in my life. I was raised by my mother, who's a strong mother. Really appreciate everything she's done for me. My stepfather came into the fold when I was a little older. But ultimately, coaches, my friends, they kept me accountable. And so I really want to lean on this about the importance of fatherhood, right? And making sure that people understand the dynamics of what it takes to be a great father, what it takes to be a present father to begin with. And, the things that we really yearn for as a son, the little nuggets of knowledge, the encouragement. And I say that because that's what I was reflecting on. I'm reflective of this journey because I feel like I'm successful. I got here, but I got here despite needing what I was yearning, that fatherhood aspect of it, right? Because make no mistake, I'm really appreciative of my stepfather. I consider him my dad. But we don't really have those father son conversations until I hit my 20s. I'm already grown. And so I'm missing all of these, and I started thinking, well, how did I get here? And I want to tell you is a lot of it were my coaches. A lot of it was the men that I surrounded myself with that were my friends, that are my brothers. I'll give you an example. Somebody like Salazar, head coach at Lanier. Steve Garcia, defensive coordinator at Lanier. Juan Cervantes, head soccer coach at Lanier. These are men that were my teammates, brothers in arms, all the way through, that always held me accountable, right? They were not afraid to tell me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear them. You know, the coaches that helped raise me, guys like Leon McNeil, John Mendes, those are my John Hornbeck. These are Charles Hornbeck. I'm sorry. These are my coaches in middle school that kind of set the formative stages, right? Don Gadden, Jeff Smith, Rudy Bernal, Carlos Peña, Victor Flores. You know Victor Flores from Dili.
The
You
big
know,
flow, yeah.
these are the men that really helped me and guide me in the direction that I find myself here today. You know, and really these little nuggets of knowledge and these little acts of kindness and belief really went a long way for me in my development. You know, and luckily I was raised by a wonderful mother, Maria Morales. Te agradezco mucho. You know, I love you so much. You know, putting me in this situation of the high school I was at with these men. Like, look, let me tell you a little story about somebody like Jeff Smith, right? I am a senior in high school. I don't even know. We talked about senior exit plans. I don't even know I'm supposed to be college football. I don't even know this. I don't even know that's part of my future. And I get a recruiting trip that's planned out for me. I don't even know how to get there. My mom's not going to take me. She's busy doing something else. I don't know how to get there. Do you know, if some of you don't know who Jeff Smith is, right? He closed his career out at Brackenridge High School. That man I love so much because the level of belief and confidence he instilled in me, literally rented a car, paid with his money, and said, "Here, Yvan and Daniel Berlanga, who was my teammate, go on this college visit, go explore, right? I trust you. You guys are responsible young men. You guys both of you got your licenses. You both got insurance. Like, I trust you. I can't take you. I'm sorry. I do have a primary engagement I got to get to, right? But here you go." Like, how many coaches will go out of their way to do that? Like, that was not like, I was just blown away. But little things like that show faith in me and belief in me was a fatherhood moment that Jeff Smith was displaying, you know, and I will never forget that. I remember that day vividly. And I remember a bunch of moments that I've had with my coaches vividly. I'm in this profession because of somebody like Carlos Peña, who was the defensive coordinator at Madison High School. I'm in this profession because of him. So I do want to send a message out as I reflected. You know, I was trying to find myself. You know, I'm 42 years old and I'm still feeling like a little boy that was craving some of that fatherhood advice, right? And that's what I was reflective on. But I was also appreciative of the men that were in my life as coaches, as my teammates slash brothers slash friends, best of friends that I could have. And I'm truly grateful for that. But I just want you to kind of serve it as a reminder for everybody that's within the earshot of this podcast that, you know, being in this profession can really change somebody's trajectory tremendously. It did for me, and we can't lose sight of that, right? Even when times get tough, you know, the fatherhood that we provide, you know, to our surrogate kids, if you will, that we coach, right? It has a lot of value. And then also, to top it all off, I've been overjoyed with the perspective I have as a father, you know, of three beautiful girls, you know, ages 5, 3, and 1, right? Like, now I have a newfound perspective, and then we can't lose sight of making sure that we ensure we're present at home and they're getting the best versions of us. Because a lot of times we get lost giving the best versions of ourselves to our community and forget the people that, you know, is our foundation at home. You know, I just wanted to, you know, share this nuggets with you guys because I think this is extremely important. You know, it's just a little bit of reflection and you know, I'm grateful for you know, this platform to share that with you guys. I'm grateful for guys like Alvi to, you know, join me in my journey and helping me in my development still at age 42.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that, Coach. I think, you know, we've talked a lot about on this podcast about the importance of what we do, and you know, there's not a day probably goes by where I don't get a message or some type of hit on social media for former athletes and former students, and the impact that we have that maybe we don't know we had at that time. And so, we are the fathers to a lot of the kids out there. We are the father figures and the role models of what it is to be a professional and uh, to be an upstanding citizen, and something that maybe they don't always get to see at home. And so, thankful for what we do and what we do for all our kids. But it's like you said, at the same time, as we can't lose sight uh, of our own families as well. And sometimes we throw ourselves so hard into coaching, into being there for other people's kids, that it's easy to neglect our own. And we don't get those times back. We've been fortunate to work for some athletic directors that said it was a non-negotiable to go see our kids' events. Whether it was a band concert or little league or whatever it is. So I know the old stringent plan is that you don't miss things as far as your coaching is concerned, but at the same time, take care of your families. And I think that's a big deal, because it was, like I just it when you were speaking, and I thought about that when that hit me a pretty good point there. But when Nick Saban retired this year, is probably the greatest college football coach in the history of college football, and they replaced him within 72 hours.
Mm.
And sometimes that coach's office that seat will get filled real quick, but the place at home, the chair at home, if you're not there, is not filled as easily. And sometimes we got to be able to balance those things and be weary of not just being role models for those that don't have, but also for our own. And that's something that sometimes we lose sight of. But
part of that, coach, is intentional too, man. Like, we're Hispanic men. We know, we understand the machismo aspect of it.
Right.
It happens in the African American community as well. Where sometimes men are a little bit more of stoic, strong, lead by example, and forget about those words of wisdom and encouragement sometimes, and really don't know how to show vulnerability.
Right.
And I think with my stepfather, like I said, I consider him my dad, man. Like he's done an amazing job when he took over our household, but he didn't know how to open up, and he threw himself at his work, so when I do say things like, I'm grateful for, the guys that helped mold me. Like I have, my friends like that consider brothers and such, man. They would tell me like they weren't afraid to show me love, man, and give me the encouragement I need. Of course, we know how to, throw insults like the best of them, the ribbing and of each other. But like, the truth, like, man, you don't understand how great it feels to have my younger brother really tell me how much he respects me, how much he loves me, how much the hug, the aggressive hugs he gives me, and he tells me, man, you're a role model to me, man. And I know that we're men, and I know we're supposed to operate with just mission straightforward, just let's get after it, and and not really consider a lot of the emotional aspects. But you don't know how much that boosts my confidence and boosts my levels of wanting to get after it, hearing that from my younger brother. And those are the things that I really feel young men need, young women need from their fathers as they're growing up, man, especially young women, and growing up in this world where, men feel threatened by their success, and they need more than ever to hear, that they're not only beautiful, but they're strong and they're fierce and they're just as tough. You know what I'm saying? So those words of wisdom from a father figure is tremendous, and we definitely don't want to lose sight of being able to show your vulnerabilities to accomplish that.
No, not at all. And at the end of the day, those relationships. I mean, we all entered this profession because there was somebody that took the time in us, and we've all had those mentor coaches, Coach Kelly Scholl and David Silva, and the list goes on, and Roberto Salazar, all the coaches that I had in my life that took time, with a kid that was injured for 2 years and then didn't give up on me, and it's the same thing, but and we spend so much time with these kids too, uh even outside of the coaching aspect, just asking, hey, what, it's I like messing with the seniors, and I'm be like, what are you going to do when you grow up, and they're like, oh well, I'm like, man, it's February, guys. Like, you got to decide something. If you need help, let me know, and those are the type of relationships that go way beyond the lines on the field, where
For sure.
you influence these kids in an amazing way, and they'll run through a wall for you, and it's just, it's why we do what we do, I guess, right? It's why we do it, because we do want to see those kids succeed, and I love to see kids come back years later and give me some positive feedback on what I impacted on them, because then at the end of the day, it makes it, all those long days and hours, and makes it worth it, and it's what we do, right?
Yes, sir. Because we about that action.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in. Another excellent podcast again. We definitely won't wait next time. Hopefully won't have a hiatus of a week. It's going to start being tough to come up with stuff to talk about, since sports going to slow down a little bit. But before we know it, March Madness will be coming around, and the draft and all kinds of stuff. So look forward to next week to seeing y'all again. Hopefully we can get some guests going next week. That's the priority list for next week, is getting some guests on here, so y'all don't just hear our voices all the time. But thanks a lot for tuning in. This has been another episode.
Like, share, subscribe.
Podcast. Yeah, like, share, subscribe.